This week's episode is brought to you by Olivia Rasmussen, Daniel Moreno, Christopher Alftenberg, Pika Rook, Shannon, and Deuce. Thank you, Olivia Rasmussen, Daniel Moreno, Christopher Alftenberg, Pika Rook, Shannon, and Deuce. It's with the generous support of listeners like you that helps us here at The Whole Rabbit keep the time disbursement non-locality tunnel of quantum indeterminism wide open and flowing with the proton-induced reverse causality waves of pure information we process using gray matter decryption and convert into sound waves you're hearing today. If you would like to help support the show, or perhaps just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you access to the full, uncut version of this episode, but our entire library of extended episodes going all the way back into the before times. But not only that, you'll get instantaneous access to our Discord server where the Buffalo roam and the Antelope play. It's also a good place to hang out and chat with creators and listeners of the show alike. Special thanks to our ongoing collaborator and sponsor, Tim Hacker of Cryptic Chronicles, crypticchronicles.com. If you're enjoying this show, but would rather save your $5 for a delicious bucket of popcorn, then please consider giving us a like, subscribe, or share on your social media platform of choice. This helps us immensely on our mission to continue making bigger and better versions of the strange content you enjoy. On this week's episode, we pull back the curtain on our personal lives to answer a number of interesting questions sent in by listeners, and even a few total strangers we approached randomly in the park. In the free section of the show, we discuss the poltergeists throwing stuff at Heka's butt, how to ward mischievous spirits away from personal property, the fine print that comes along with cursing people, how the universe is an escape room, the satanic games that children play, our favorite Greek gods, smash or pass, more butt stuff, and psychic self-defense. In the extended episode, we discuss the power of the Lord's Prayer, the magical roots of Christianity, whether to use astrology or not, Satan, why we need to do an episode about the secret space program, and that one time I accidentally joined a cult. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
You know how your nose and your ears never stop growing?
Yeah.
So like with elves, would it just be like a really old ass elf would just have massive ears?
Maybe it's the opposite with elves. Maybe their ears don't grow and they're just born with these huge ears and they just kind of stay the same as they grow.
And that's what comes out first, you know, when they're being born.
You just pull them by the ears, yeah. Makes it really easy. You just got to get the ears out first, you know, like get your fingers in there and be like, get the little loop in the ear and then pull it out like a carrot. That's how elves are born.
You just plant a set of ears and then, you dig up an elf, a couple months.
From the Cabbage Patch.
Oh, is that what they're calling it now? A cabbage patch. Sup, girl? I'm trying to see that cabbage patch.
Ooh.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we do more than just inform you about the extra-dimensional Nephilimic monstrosities from the other side of the veil that CERN is contacting with the expressed intention of turning all of our brains into blood-flavored popcorn for Satan. Nay, due to a lack of usable time in our week, we take a break from our regularly scheduled programming and episodes about the tarot to put our pinkies in the air as we sip neurotoxic energy drinks, pull back the curtain on our private thoughts and practices, because this week we're exposing ourselves to the unfiltered barrage of questions submitted to us by both listeners and strangers alike to answer them with embarrassing levels of honesty. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, also known as the Hack Rabbit. I am joined this week by the musically maniacal Malachor 5.
Not my cabbages.
And the hell-hassling harbinger of healing, Heka Astra.
Hello.
Marisama is currently on vacation in Australia, where she was invited to skydive over areas that have been permanently blacked out on Google Earth in search of a hidden colony of kangaroo people that specialize in medieval swordsmanship. She will be giving us a full report when she returns.
Woo!
But how's everybody else doing this week?
I had a lucky penny that fell behind me on Saturday, just out of nowhere. And I had been missing this exact penny for years.
When you say it fell behind you, you mean like your butt bumped into a dresser and it like fell off the surface?
No, it was a big open space on my floor, and I had my back turned, and I was leaning over a Rubbermaid container where I was just like hands inside the Rubbermaid container organizing some studio stuff. And then I heard this like plunk on the carpet behind me. And when I turned, it was just right there in the middle of the floor.
I think that's what we call in the industry a portation. It's like teleportation, except it comes out of nowhere.
It's kind of funny because you were telling me before when they started doing renovations upstairs. Like I live on the bottom floor in a basement suite, and they're renovating the whole upstairs. And you were telling me that poltergeist activity often increases during renovations.
Yes, that is common for places prone to supernatural activity. If you start pulling out bathtubs and wrenching off the kitchen sink, you're likely to have more ghost activity for some reason. Anytime you remodel or do anything like that, the ghosts seem to go into overdrive. And in this case, this one started throwing pennies at your butt.
It also sounds like it could be Hitman or Solid Snake, because those kinds of characters are known for just, tossing pennies to distract you while they sneak around when you look away.
Oh, it could have been a ninja. Had you thought of that?
I just thought it was cool to get my lucky penny back because, like in Canada, where I live, they discontinued pennies like several years ago. So we don't have any pennies in Canada. Even long before that, maybe as a teenager, I've had this penny, and it's an ascending dove on one side and then the head of Queen Elizabeth on the other side. And it's one of those centennial pennies. So it's like 1867 to 1967.
It looks like Queen Elizabeth is on the head side of the penny.
Yeah, really young Queen Elizabeth.
She's still kind of hot.
It became my lucky penny because it had the dove ascending on the other side. And now I have it right here.
So when I was a kid, my mom told me there was this thing called the black hole, where things like socks disappear to, stuff that you lose that you really should be able to find but absolutely cannot, and then usually it appears later somewhere obvious. She said that was called the black hole. I'm wondering, did the ghosts from upstairs steal your penny as some kind of a tax, and what did you do to get this money back? Do they want you to invest in their startup company? What's the deal?
I don't know, but I like to call them stuff gnomes. Like the stuff gnomes come, they steal your stuff, they have a bit of a mischievous hide stuff on you kind of thing. And then when you've forgotten about it or are no longer looking for it, then they give it back to you. Maybe because it's money, they used it to invest in Bitcoin. Who knows?
My pseudo house motto is always remember you're forgetting something. I definitely believe there is like a magical or occult aura around keys, remote controls, socks. The list goes on, guitar picks, especially like lighters, things that just like I put them down and they just get sucked into a black hole by the stuffed gnomes of the void. And I've used that energy, so to speak, to obfuscate my own presence at times. It's a little tricky, but you kind of embody this missing item kind of persona and everybody forgets about you, so to speak. But I guess I've thought about this concept before, and these little entities and like this void area, I definitely imagine it as a magical occult space.
I do kind of think that Luke was right, though, about it being related to poltergeist activity, because this house, it seems to be fairly active. And I have even had like little rocks, like little pebbles fall from fucking nowhere in this house as well. So I don't know. I'm just glad it's actually something that means something to me this time.
As I mentioned, they call that apportation, meaning it just appears out of nowhere. And I have read something, I believe it may have been in Psychonaut by Peter J. Carroll, where he says he used rage gnosis once to manifest his car keys because he couldn't find them. And he got so mad. He got so divinely infuriated that he heard his keys fall out of nowhere and drop on the floor behind him during his rage. And then he got to leave.
Awesome.
I believe in that.
Apparently when it's pebbles, like small rocks, apparently that's like a pretty common thing with poltergeist activity.
I think this brings us to a question, once again, by your roommate, Heka Astra, in terms of channeling one's raw occult energy or being the victim of raw occult energy. Have you ever cursed anyone before?
That's my roommate Genevieve asking. I personally have not intentionally cursed anybody. Not generally my thing, but I think I have, I guess you could say, accidentally cursed people before, just from being so livid and making a genuine wish. So I haven't gone out of my way personally to do like rituals to curse somebody. But I think if you wish powerfully enough from a genuine place, that it just happens sometimes.
Yeah, you bring up the word wish, and that's the word I was going to use, especially in regards to like a jinn or some entity that's granting you this. I haven't directly cursed anybody, but you've tried perhaps blessing somebody and then it all goes to shit. And like the whole time you were like, I hope everything goes well for you. You're in my thoughts. But there's something deep in your core that's like, you just kind of jinxed them. What's the difference at that point, right? Like you just used your juju on them. I don't know if that's an okay term to use anymore, but you use it on them, kind of like, oh wait, maybe I gave them something that was unstable, and like if they don't handle that well, like it can go really bad. I don't know, sometimes you're putting too much worry or like too much care into the circumstance, and then it spirals out into a bad incident, and you're like right in the middle of it. I've felt this before, like during a car accident. Like I felt it about to happen before I even stepped in the car, and it was a minor car accident, but I was like, I'm just feeling that this guy's gonna rear end somebody. I'm just getting like a vivid flash of it, and I was like putting all the energy into, like, I wasn't even mentioning it, but I was just like, protect this car, like don't let that happen. And then sure enough it happened, and I'm like, well, I probably jinxed it. Is that how it feels to curse?
I think I have maybe a few examples of how it plays out for me. So like there was one employee that was giving Luke a really, really difficult time.
Oh, you did curse this person. Yeah, you totally did.
And he was making everything so miserable for you. And I had said from a very genuine place, in the moment, I hope this person gets fired or quits. And it was like a week and a half later, he gets fired, like really bad situation fired.
I had to help fire him on my birthday.
Yeah. But then when it comes to like a conscious thing of planning out, I always end up coming to this point before I even say or act or do anything, unless it's in the moment. I come to this point where I genuinely wish that the person grows or just becomes a better person, no matter what horrible shit they have done. Instead of just wishing ill to them, I end up coming to a point where I genuinely wish them health and happiness. And that in and of itself can sometimes be a curse because sometimes it seems for that person to become healthy and happy, they end up having to go through some crazy dark night of the soul.
I would say this is the difference between demon magic and angel magic. Angel magic, it's like, well, I kind of just want to not hurt this person. And you might put them on a path that's really challenging. And then it's just like, boom, justice was served. And then it's kind of like, well, do you feel bad? And you're like, maybe a little bit, like I should have left them alone. But, it could always go well for them, and they might evolve and, fulfill that desire in you for them to be better, instead of just like smite them and just completely ruin their life.
Right. It is genuinely a blessing, but sometimes for that blessing to come to fruition, it feels a lot like a curse.
On the reverse end of it, you can try cursing them, and then all it does is make them stronger and give them like more dark side points, and they just become a bigger monster in your world. And you're like, well, I just did that to myself, didn't I?
Like the bad guy in Fifth Element, the giant orb.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I found that just being upset at somebody tends to leak into their experience, and I see bad things happen to people that upset me. But then, if I go a step further and I even visualize something bad happening to that person, sometimes just spontaneously, just because I'm upset, that's like taking it a step too far. And when I've been in really bad places in my life, I've found that even visualizing bad things happening to somebody tends to give me blowback very quickly. So in one instance, I was doing it somewhat regularly, and I started to get warts on my hand.
What?
Yeah, I started to get these little warts on my hand. And anytime I would like painfully dig them out or pull them off or remove them or whatever,
That's so gross.
more would spread across my hand, which is, you're not supposed to do that. But they were unsightly and terrible,
Oh my
and like
God.
I couldn't help it. And at some point, after watching my thoughts and meditating and getting back on a positive track in my life, one day they just withered up and disappeared and never came back.
Are you saying that you had them because you were ill-wishing so much?
Personally, yes, that's what I believe happened. I'm sure there was some scientific, biological reason underlying it that was the physical basis of it happening, but that only happened because of my negative thinking. In my opinion, I was working a lot with plants. So I don't know if working with plants can give you warts, but I was doing like some North Korean labor camp invasive species removal, like spending 8 hours a day in the sun pulling out Russian thistle with gloves that didn't work in direct sunlight with no wind. And that was that really hot summer. Well, everybody was out enjoying Pokemon Go when we all thought Hillary Clinton was going to be president. I remember those times. I was working with a bunch of temps or like people that get their job from an agency for a few weeks. I worked with a lot of people from Palmdale. They told me that everyone that was in the hip hop scene had to take it in the butt in order to get a record deal. And it had been that way for every mainstream rapper since Snoop Dogg. But we're not here to discuss Sean Puff Daddy Combs. We're here to, what are we here for, Heka?
Well, basically, we asked the listeners, people in our Discord, to ask us questions. Just given some of the questions that people have been asking us, it kind of seems like they just want to know more about us in general. And maybe that's something that we kind of just take for granted with a weekly show. But it does seem like people genuinely want to know what we're like outside of the show.
Weird.
They want to get to know us as more than just a personality or voice. Who the heck are we? What do we do? What do we like? Maybe it sounds a bit like AA. But starting with the basics, who is your daddy and what does he do?
I don't want to talk about my daddy.
So Luke, what do you do for work, hobbies, lifestyle, music? What's important to you in life?
You know, I think my job might be worth talking about because I manage, host, and run escape rooms for a living.
It's kind of cool from my perspective. Seems like a chill job most of the time.
I think that escape rooms came into my life by way of the universe, having asked so many questions about the nature of reality and wanting to know the truth, that I was given years and years and years worth of answers in the form of this job. And I say this because I genuinely believe now the theological truth of the universe we live in is much like an escape room. Because there's so much suffering in the world, and so often in life, you're just like, what is the point of this? Why is there so much consternation, trouble? Why is everything in my life not working? How do I progress to the next part? How do I get away from this thing that I'm under? And at some point, the universe is like, listen, man, it's an escape room. It's all an escape room. Why do I say that? An escape room is a place that you decide to go. You spend money to have an experience for a limited amount of time. Within that time, you are given a series of obstacles, puzzles, a bit of a hacky bad storyline, and depending on your luck, your intelligence, sometimes skill, but mostly a willingness to continue, you progress through the story, you uncover mysteries and learn more about your environment, which helps you to progress even further until eventually you have solved for yourself most or all of the mysteries that have been placed before you. And then when your time is up, you're out, you're gone.
Just like life.
Yes, and during that time, you have the ability to ask for help. Sometimes it involves a complicated ritual. Other times, the game host just cannot stand watching you fumble around anymore. And they give you a bit of a hint that, for your sake and theirs, allows you to go a little bit further. Perhaps they're just really stoked on giving you one part of the story that they know you will enjoy, because that makes it worth paying the price. And in some cases, some of us didn't pay the price. Some of us are just here because our friends dragged us here. And it's also possible that the person who dragged us here is no good at the game themselves. And you, the person who didn't even want to play, is either A, now enjoying it more than they are, or B, is the only one capable of solving the mysteries in the room.
So basically your job is an archon.
Yes, I am an archon, and in my case, I am the demiurge at my particular locations that I manage. I maintain some very cleverly, yet in some cases, hokey puzzles and rooms and designs that keep people very entrenched in their situation, to keep them very immersed in what they're doing. And if I do my job successfully, people get out of the room and they reflect on what an amazing time they had, even if during the room itself, they're like pulling their hair out and yelling at their friends and being like, we gotta do, you know what I mean? And it's not about getting out. It's about the experience along the way and the people you meet, etc., etc. And then sometimes the game host will lie to you or deceive you or, tell you that you were doing better than you actually did, to reassure you and get you to come back and play again, but this time in a different room, as a different person, with a different storyline.
What about hobbies, lifestyle? What's important?
All I do is work at escape rooms and work on this show. That's about it. I really am enjoying Diablo 4 right now, but I think if I could do it all over again, I would try to get into making movies, because my love of film is probably why this podcast exists at all. I saw Room 237, a documentary about The Shining, and I realized by watching that documentary that the best filmmakers do the same thing that classical authors did when they wrote some of the most enduring pieces of literature we have to enjoy, which is they put symbolism in it, they put secret storylines in it, and a whole other layer of meaning. Sometimes, in Kubrick's case, layers and layers and layers of meaning, which I thought only schizophrenics looked at the world with those types of eyes, being able to see all those different layers. But in fact, artists do it all the time. And so I wanted to make this show to get further into that idea that I love so much, which is the world that we are presented with is just the surface level, and that some of the most passionate people and, well, I guess wizards upon this earth have created a certain depth that we're capable of penetrating into and seeing a glimpse behind the curtain. I love that stuff.
What about you, Mal?
The best job that I would talk about is my job that I worked at a bar. I was a bartender. I was assistant manager, security guard. I play in a band.
What kind of music?
We play like a crossover style of metal and punk with some really death metal parts, though, not just like Metallica sound and like generic metal. We use double bass and blast beats sometimes. It's really abrasive and loud, fast music. There's actually no such thing as fast music, but I really enjoyed working at this bar because there was an array of bands that played there, anywhere from like freeform jazz to just poetry, filmmakers in the Los Angeles area. Mind you, the clientele of this place was like everybody was above 60 for the most part, and there were a lot of like original punks from LA that were friends with some of the more legendary bands, but a lot of them are retired, right? And they don't go to your typical festivals anymore, so they would kind of come to this spot, and some of them still played in a band, but it wasn't punk anymore. It was like weirdo rock jazz with a 60-year-old old guy on saxophone for 2 hours straight. It was in a part of LA that's in the middle of the hills and inside the small neighborhood. There's a lot of gang activity.
Come and get one in the yarbles! If you have any yarbles, you eunuch jelly thou!
I've heard from a magical perspective, when you read an old grimoire and it's like, oh, go do this thing at a crossroads, right? A modern day equivalent of a crossroads is oftentimes a bar. It's a place where different energies come together and then disperse, and all of them, every one of them has that magical aura, which can cause magical stuff to happen or chance encounters, etc., etc.
Some people are just really talkative and they're talking to you about something you're not really into, but you gotta humor them. Some people are telling you the stuff that they're doing at JPL. One of the patrons was explaining to me how at JPL, his particular job was looking at the data that the satellites are picking up of the tectonic plate shift, that the San Andreas Fault is like extremely active and it's picking up more and more, and that they're noticing it from the satellites, and that's his job. And it's like, damn, that's pretty fucking amazing. And I would just throw all these crazy science questions at them and, just conversate with them. I would do security guard work, would do the bartending job, and I would perform some nights doing all three of those tasks at once. I try to be a jack of all trades. You can put me into any situation and I get the job done. It's kind of always been the way I am. I just have a lot of confidence in myself, and landing that job in particular, it was done while I was on acid. I didn't work there, and I showed up and played a show, and I was just talking with the boss and was high as hell, and he was just like, man, you're really cool, do you want to work here? I don't like to just toot my own horn, especially on a microphone, but I am a bit of a performer, and I do like to go on stage, and I don't do it for others. It's like I am selfish and I do it for myself. There's not too much I want to share about my personal life with our listeners because there's not too much to me. I'm a regular dude at the end of the day, and I'm honestly just really grateful that I'm able to be on this show for as long as I have, and have some of the cool conversations that we've had about movies and video games. It's really cool that Heka, being a female, is really into Bloodborne and the lore.
I love Bloodborne.
I'm here for that kind of stuff too. If it wasn't for Luke doing the Satanic video game magic episode, I don't think I would have found the podcast, because I think that's the first episode I ever listened to, if I remember correctly. Post-COVID, I've really got more into D&D, and I play Magic the Gathering. I'm just a big nerd, and I'm a bit of a recluse at heart, but like I said, it's just work to be on a microphone and on stage.
Do you have magical things that happen to you by playing D&D? Do you manifest stuff with tabletop games?
That's saying a lot there, is that yes, there's sometimes just weird coincidences happen in game and then they manifest themselves shortly after. That's really like the spookiest. It's like I literally was doing this in my game or somebody else was, and now I'm like in a reflected version of that in real life.
This is the path I wanted them to take in Stranger Things, and they sort of like played with it in the beginning and then just dropped it. But I believe there's some truth to the evangelical paranoia about D&D, where if you get enough people sitting in a room together, all thinking the same thoughts with that same level of intensity, then they go and they write it down on paper and they draw out little maps and they act like it's real, that in and of itself is like a ritual and can cause magic effects. So when you play D&D, you're playing with the devil, etc., etc.
That's basically Anton LaVey satanic rituals in a nutshell, right there.
I don't want to throw card games, tabletop stuff under the bus, but they do their research. The people who make these games, the names of the evil entities, they're very similar to actual goetic spirits or entities. That's one thing, but the actual act of like role playing in a ritual sense is the same thing as you would see in any Golden Dawn or quote unquote proper satanic LaVey style ritual. There are roles, and even like the chance of you contacting said spirit is like you're rolling a D20. How much affinity do you have with that, God or that thing? What's your role? Did you make contact this time? No. Or yes. And that's a lot like how real life is for a magician.
I know very little about D&D. My brain is not high-powered enough to really play it. But I did find that during my research when learning about the god Mercury and where that deity came from, his early incarnation in mythology is almost a dead ringer for Shandukal, who's like a god of travel and the wind in D&D. It's like, how did they know that? They must have been researched. They must have like tapped into something. And so be careful who your sponsoring deity is. How about you, Heka Astra? What do you do for work? And have you ever manifested anything with tabletop games? May I search your panties?
Yes, you may.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've talked about my profession before. I went to college for fashion design, so that's pretty much my career at this point. I make custom garments or custom leather work. For the last couple of years, it's been mostly leather work. I worked a lot in the film industry doing props and costumes. But basically, I think in a nutshell, I'm a contract worker that will build whatever you ask me to out of pretty much anything.
So you poke holes in dead stuff and sew them together.
Yeah, I pierce holes through flesh quite a bit. And then I guess for hobbies, I thoroughly enjoy writing, anything to do with spiritual stuff. I think that's pretty obvious and probably a big part of why I ended up being on the show. I really love hiking and foraging and making things from foraged stuff. So whether it's a salve or medicine or food. So I like gardening. I like building things out of found objects, painting, playing video games, pretty much creation. I think my hobby and love and lifestyle has a lot that revolves around creating things.
Do you have any dead animals in the freezer?
I have quite a few that are not food because taxidermy is also one of my hobbies. I mean, you want to know what's in the freezer?
Yeah, give us the list.
So right now, God, I hope my roommate doesn't hear this.
She's next.
In my deep freezer, there's a raccoon. There's at least 3 crows. There's a seagull wing, probably a couple pigeons, maybe a rat. There's a squirrel. And I don't know if that's all of them. And then for what things are important to me in life, I would say, as cheesy as it sounds, the number one thing that is important to me is love.
It's a tiny bit corny.
It's pretty corny.
But it's probably true for all of us.
Yeah, creating things, love and loving life basically is really important to me. And Luke, of course.
We're engaged.
And it's taking forever for the visa to be processed so I can get down to the States.
It's not like the old days where you could just bonk a lady over the head and take her as your wife. You have to ask the government for permission. Both governments, by the way. And they move at glacial speed.
It's been over a year just waiting on the visa at this point. And then I know Mari's not here, but I thought it'd be kind of funny to speculate as to what's important to Mari. And I think it's very important to Mari that you give her a milk bone if she sits and shakes her paw. So if you shake her paw, you have to give her a milk bone. It's really important to her.
I think shaking her butt like a corgi is important.
This is true. Telling her that she's very, very good. You're very good, Mari.
Good Maury. Belly scritches. All right. This is a question sent by Jesse Ray. Who is your favorite Greek god?
I don't know if I have a favorite.
It's honestly a pretty tough one because they're all double-edged swords, you know?
I think if I was put into a position where I absolutely had to pick, it would probably come down to Hermes or Artemis, just as personally relatable.
Mine is either Artemis or Jupiter or Zeus, you know? They're pretty up there.
I really love Artemis as well. She is genuinely a bit frightening. But what we have learned from researching on this show, there are quite a few Greek gods that have been like smashed and pushed together by monotheistic religion, in my opinion, to create Lucifer, Diana Artemis being one of the primary ones.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about on our next show, Phaeton, who is obviously a Lucifer archetype. And following along this trail of Lucifer archetypes, I think my favorite would have to be Prometheus.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
He gave us fire. He's basically Doctor Who. He's our champion. He's out there suffering on our behalf, giving us the stuff, and he's a god of divination because his name means foresight, which is why Zeus has his eagle pecking out his liver every day, which then regenerates because the liver was used in divination.
It makes sense.
One of my other favorites, definitely in my top 5 Greek gods, is Morpheus. He's kind of a god of sleep, or actually of dreams, specifically a messenger to kings in their dreams. So a bit like Hermes, this messenger entity, but this is like your subconscious, just a whole subconscious operation of worship. You know, if you're to dedicate your practice to Morpheus, it's an interesting thing, right? Like, are you in your dream state a lot? Are you lucid dreaming, like in worshiping in dreams, waiting for interpretation? I think that's a lot different than like, oh, it's morning, I gotta meditate on the sun that's like physically burning me. That's easy compared to like, let's fall asleep and worship in lucid sleep. That's kind of cool.
Subconscious dream Hermes.
I'm trying really hard not to bring up Lawrence Fishburne right now. But if you want to take that path, if Neo is like the chosen one in the Matrix, it's Morpheus who awakens him. You can even argue that it's Morpheus who is the one that initiated all of the events in the 3 Matrix films, because it's through his belief and his emphatic statements declaring Neo as the one, which makes Neo the one.
Yeah, he's kind of like telling the king, you're the king, rise up, like wake up, dude. Like, you're in your dream right now. Get out and realize this because you're the king.
Almost like a call to lucid dream, like something in your dream that's still a part of you that's like, hey, wake up within your dream.
There's definitely a lucid dream remote viewing episode brewing, and I think we're going to have to talk a lot about Morpheus's legend. Maybe the Onoroi, too, his daemons, or the dream daemons.
I'm so bad at lucid dreaming that when I've done spells for lucid dreaming, or one of the first deities I even contacted was Morpheus in my chaos magic days, I found that by working with those energies, I tend to get dream-like energy in my waking life. My life starts to feel like a waking dream.
I kind of dig that. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but I get a sense of what you're saying. Is just a normal day is like malleable, and I feel like I'm in the flow state, maybe not mentally, but the environment around me definitely is just like putting everything in front of me. I can't explain it, but it's just like, well, that was a dreamy day, wasn't it? Like, I didn't do anything really.
Like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. We also got another question from Jesse Ray. Greek gods, smash or pass?
I actually had to ask what smash or pass meant because I'm socially retarded.
I would definitely pass on Hephaestus, but totally smash his wife.
Because that's what you do in Greek myth. You smash other people's wives. That's the big thing.
I mean, this is a little bit of an awkward question, I think. But, I don't really think of Greek gods as being in the flesh. And because they are entities, sexual union means something totally different to me. And it might be kind of strange to say, but I think if you're picking up what I'm putting down, I think it's important to have union with all aspects of divinity.
You whore!
I love you, though.
What about Zeus as a goose? What if you were bathing naked in a lake and a Zeus goose came down and he was like, honk, Because all my research that we talked about with Letta seemed to suggest that it was non-consensual, but also maybe she just couldn't say no because he's Zeus, and it was this uneven power dynamic, which even if on the surface she said yes, was actually like a coerced, so like...
Well, I think there's probably aspects of yourself that you can't say no to. So that is how I would personally view that within myself and be able to relate to it without invoking any form of like physical non-consensual scenario. But also on the other hand, like there are Greek goddesses that are the virgin goddesses that you're not allowed to touch them, basically. You're
It's true.
they're hands off.
That is why Artemis is frightening. If you just happen upon naked Artemis, your hunting dogs are going to tear you apart. You won't even be able to keep it together.
She can
Right.
smash me anytime.
So I think part of maybe, oh my God, I think maybe part of smashing that is actually in respectfully passing that, if that makes sense.
Aww.
Because then she's going to get mad at you. Like, why don't you want me, asshole? She's just going to shoot an arrow at your dick.
Arrow dick.
No, if you do it respectfully, I think she'd be like, thank you.
I just imagine her as a goth mommy trying to peg you.
I'm sorry I took this like totally hilarious question and turned it into some deeper spiritual discussion point.
You're bringing up a good point because in a way, Pan smashes and passes on everybody.
And Dionysus has like his whole harem of wizened, hot women following him around. So, well, I don't know if I want to like check Dionysus's temperature or nothing, but...
Well, the whole point of these ancient mythologies is to understand how these divine energies work in the first place as defined by their egregores and relating it to the lives of humans and our interactions. So the stories that are spun from that is based on stuff that we can understand and relate to. So like in order to understand it and coming to know it, you're really having sex with it.
That's the idea with the whole NOX, Night of Pan thing. You're letting Pan smash you, impregnate you. Of course, this isn't a physical interaction with Pan, though a ritual might be that very act, but...
I mean, you can do dramatic ritual in a lot of different ways, and sex magic can be a part of that for sure.
Supposedly that's why Crowley was so into butt stuff. Because he didn't like to receive butt stuff. He liked to give butt stuff. But by receiving the butt stuff, it caused his brain to melt. And once his brain had melted, it was uninhibited to receive the unfiltered light of God, which, if you want to get all nerdy about it, you call Pan, because Pan means the all. And so it's a fancy way of saying experiencing God without the filters of the personality, because you have so traumatized the personality with the butt stuff that you can now glimpse deity.
So what you're saying is pull a Crowley and smash your past.
Yeah, Crowley was like the ultimate power bottom in the occult world because he was down with the Zeus goose giving him a loose caboose, if you know what I mean.
Oh my
he
God.
was. He very much was.
He was like, oh, actually, I think I quite like this.
He was upset about it. He writes in his commentary in the Book of the Law how that whole thing was realized to him that he wasn't the one in control.
I think he came to like it eventually, is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, because the magical juice was great.
So another listener, Radix, asked, for each of you, what was the first working, reading, etc. that made this magic stuff spark for you? Like that event that stands out.
It's so hard to answer.
I think I've mentioned this before on previous shows, but I don't have any single moment myself that stands out. It's just been like crazy spiritual my whole life. I don't know if there's like a first real working that I remember specifically.
For me, to get a little personal again, there's a lot of trauma in my early life. And for me, now that I got older, I can see in retrospect that my methods of dealing with pain, whether it was physical or mental, that were developed with my early meditation education that I got from some hippies, essentially, that lived on my street. That's kind of what confirmed it for me, was being able to deal with pain. Eventually, I learned how to do it within an instant. I can punch a wall multiple times before I stop. It's not a reaction. Getting rid of the reactionary mind, getting control of your subconscious, not always getting so heated in arguments, being the first one to go there. That all was developed through maturing my meditative states of mind. And I've always always been able to lucid dream since I was a baby. Well, not a baby, but like since all I can remember. And working on those states of mind, I've never had anything paranormal happen, but anything that got close to me that I felt like it, I just tap into a strong crystal body meditative state and get rid of any shadow of doubt in my environment. You know, if I felt like there was an evil presence, just put up your guard, you know, get ready to parry that attack, you know, and get them with the visceral critical strike. It's kind of always been my method, and it's always worked. I've kept myself out of too much self-harm and harm to others. And the times that I have harmed others or myself, it's been very bad because I didn't have my guard up at all, and it was like a vulnerable state. I got critical striked in those scenarios.
My answer is going to be really, really embarrassing and personal. And this is where I'm going to make you pull out the credit card and pay me $5 to hear it in the extended show. But before I ask you that, I would like to get into some of what you mean about magical self-defense, because we get asked this question quite a bit, even when we're not asking for listener questions. What do you mean by going into your crystal body? How do you put up your magical defenses? Would you please speak on this a little bit for anyone who's curious?
Sure. All right. So in a physical interaction, sometimes you're nervous. You got to talk to somebody that's in a higher authoritative position than you. They have the ability to talk down to you, and you have to watch your words, right? Say for an interview, you need to put on a good first impression. You know, you can't let your leg tap when you're just regularly talking, you know, when you're just answering binary questions. How old are you? And you're right there like, you know, I've never wanted to come off that way. You know, sometimes in your environment, maybe you're walking in the woods and it's really dark, right? And you can hear something. It could be a raccoon. It could be a bat. It could be a fucking mountain lion. You don't know.
It could be old Greg.
You pull me up with your strong arms.
But what do you do to get into your defense state? Do you breathe? Do you just focus your thoughts? What do you do? You
have to recognize the environment and what are you reacting to. Sometimes in the mind, you're jumping to conclusions. You got to suppress that. So it is like, I imagine myself mentally or astrally up on top of the spherical world, and I'm looking down at all the problems on Earth as one thing. All the problems on Earth are collectively just one entity to worry about. And I try to just simplify the problem, right? It's a mix of breathing, because sometimes your environment's cold. I found that breathing very quickly in cold environments just makes you colder. Slow your breathing down to like 5 counts, inhale, 5 counts, hold, 5 counts, exhale, hold. That's what warms your body up or makes it immune. And I think of laying on my bed comfortably when I'm actually on the concrete floor trying to relax in a festival or in some random environment. You know, I don't know how to really explain this. You know, you kind of just trick yourself. You psyop yourself to transcend the reality of your environment. First of all, like, you know, I'm not here right now. I'm not freaked out by the creepy sound in the woods. I'm actually a knight in armor, and I have spiritual weapons to keep that thing psychically away. That fear and that instinctual desire to run or to freak out and start yelling when somebody yells at you first, you know, you have to quiet that by like, well, I have to stay composed, right? Like, I don't know. It's a mix of how you're sitting or standing, how you're breathing, what you're looking at. Sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm looking way far away if it's a really serious conversation, because I'm really focusing on what they're telling me, and I'm with my eyes, I just want to look at something else instead of the words coming out of their mouth, you know, at their mouth, you know?
So you're a little bit like Shinji Ikari from Neon Genesis, and you use your mind to slip into your giant mech robot.
Absolutely. Like a virus, it's down to the physics of its construction, right? It has spikes specifically to penetrate the defenses of the cell that it's trying to infect, right? So how do you gauge that energy that you're trying to combat and figure out the phalanx formation to guard yourself properly and approach it from that point of view, rather than the point of view that like, oh, I don't have any of that psychic energy up. I'm not always wearing my holy halo crown, you know, but when I'm walking down the street, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, let me put on my diamond armor, right? Just so I can walk without feeling pain or fatigue at all on my walk home. It's a little weird to say, but once you start kind of thinking about it and it becomes like a subconscious action, you can just turn it on. That's how you get through a marathon or, you know, a 2-mile run that's timed. You know, you have to do it within a certain amount of time. You just can't, you don't have time to feel pain and to cry, you know, like you gotta just stop it. That's for for me, magic, ultimately, because you're beating your environment. You're changing your reality by changing your behavior or your mental state. And what manifests is all based off of that anyway. So you got to control what you input and output in this realm, I guess.
Would you say that a big part of what you're describing is visualizing and putting things in your immediate aura that combat or counteract what it is that you're dealing with?
Yeah. And ultimately, like I said, I start off by looking at just the whole world. I try to just envelop all the problems as one singular problem. And that's just like a basic answer, but that's an easy meditation. I'm in my spaceship away from the earth, and all these problems are not anything but the earth, and I'm not there mentally, right? You just separate yourself directly from the environment.
And this is something we're going to talk about on our remote viewing show, where oftentimes people discover OBEs by undergoing some sort of immense trauma, or they have something very horrible happen to them. And in order to deal with that immediate suffering, pain, or torture, they find themselves hovering outside of their body, looking at it from the outside.
So all this defense-related topic, it ties in really nicely to what Sif, one of our Discord users, was asking. He said, I'm working on little physical wards for my home. Do you know anything about home protection? Do you have any advice? He's kind of looking for the knock your socks off type of banishing and warding.
What you want to do is dig a 6-foot trench and fill it full with burning garbage. That usually keeps people away.
But it will attract raccoons.
See, and that's a problem. Let's talk about something more practical.
Moats and crocodiles.
I don't think the ASPCA would take that very well either. Let's talk about some practical ways of defending your house with wards spiritually before we wrap up the free show. How do you do it? What do you do to protect your house from the succubi that want to check your temperature when you're sleeping?
I mean, I guess a very basic Kabbalistic version of this. If you own your home or your land, you'd find your cardinal directions. You'd figure out which angel's associated with that direction. And I guess on like a perpendicular plane, you would put the sigil associated to the angel and charge it with prayer as you pray in those directions around your property, right? You know, that will give it archangel protection, so to speak. They say salt rings also have an effect. I like to think of any of these spiritual energies as like electromagnetic, subtle fabric-like entities. And the salt, you know, is very conductive and it disrupts their whole physical structures. I think that might be a realistic interpretation of why salt works, but, you know, that's not proven at all.
What about you, Heka? How do you defend a home psychically with wards? What do you do for that?
For physical wards, I like to have this giant wooden Algiz rune on my door that I made, which has a skunk skull on it as well. I think skunks are really, really great for scaring people away. That's what their energy is all about.
Did we hear you correctly? You use skunk jizz?
No, I have the skull of a skunk on an Algiz rune that's made of twigs and hemp rope that I made.
That's like the peace sign turned upside down, right?
Yeah, it's like a really big one that I made and mounted on my front door. I also use evil eyes that face outwards from my windows. I have what I call witch balls in my windows.
Witch balls!
They're basically like twigs that have been bound up into a ball. And the idea is kind of similar to a dream catcher, where things that are trying to come in to your house get stuck inside of them, basically. And then I also use bagua mirrors, which are those Chinese mirrors that have the I Ching hexagrams around them. And basically you face them towards doors and windows. And the way that they work is that when demons or evil spirits come in, they are just given a reflection of what's outside, and so they can't come in. With the witch balls, when they get full, so to speak, I dispose of them and replace them with new ones. And you can kind of just feel when they've taken in a whole lot. And I also really enjoy using psalms. There's quite a few psalms for homes that are specific for banishing, protecting, blessing. And some of these old school psalm spells will actually have you make things and place them in the corners of your home and stuff like that. So
I like how so much of your occult protection comes down to balls and jizz, really.
You would.
But if you'd like to hear more about our harrowing experiences of our personal life, about that one time I accidentally found myself in a cult, not the occult, but an actual cult, as well as how the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s from which we came influenced our path in magic, what we think UFOs are, how to take a ritual bath, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you this extended episode, but all of our extended episodes going back over 3 years, and you'll even get the secret keys to our Discord server, which, by the way, has been recently cleansed of its deep cover CIA agent spies.
Yeah, I thought some of you were cool, but you're not.
But you can also link up with us to play Diablo 4 on your platform of choice and run around with us killing demons the way it was meant to be. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew, pew.